Well, thank you. I certainly appreciate it. Jacqueline, the work that you're doing is so important, and I feel very grateful for the opportunity to present here at Health Tie and to the good folks who are on the line today. My goal in any of these presentations is not just to share with you what we're doing here at opiAID and our mission and our love for our neighbors, but also to learn and grow. I think that the only way to really get ahead and make a significant difference in the fight against substance use and addiction is to have a community of people around you. I think that's a great differentiator. And if this were a problem that were easy to solve, a company would have already figured out by now. But I think it takes a collection of different resources, people, including technology, to really make a meaningful impact. So thank you for this opportunity. And if I were to make a very bold ask, as you had mentioned earlier in the call, like I did at 1 Million Cups in Raleigh, Durham, is what would really help to put us over the top is additional data and dollars. As simple as that. You'll come to understand where we are and why that is so significant. But data and dollars is where it's at. Help us improve our algorithms and reach more people. So thank you very much for this opportunity. So opiAID's a data science company. We're focused on improving outcomes for people struggling with substance use disorder. This slide tells you a little bit about what's going on and both the costs, both financially and to human life. But let me tell you a real story. In my backyard, Wilmington, North Carolina, we're on the other side of the US. In Wilmington, North Carolina, this is a beautiful town we live in right by the beach. But more than 1 out of 10 people struggle with substance use disorder. And it's atrocious. 1 out of 2 people literally wake up with withdrawal every day here in my city. And the problem isn't bound by economics. It's not bound by some social construct. It affects everybody equally here. And we have a really huge gap between the haves and have-nots here. And it's pretty wild how pervasive the problem is here, even with all our resources. So the birth of opiAID really came out of a desire to change the conversation about how we look at substance use disorder and how we can make a meaningful impact in improving outcomes from substance use disorder. So a little bit about opiAID. We're a 2-year-old startup comprised of medical doctors, PhDs, data scientists, and some business development folks as well. My name is David Reeser. I'm CEO and co-founder of opiAID. And my sincere desire is to see my neighbors, who I define as anyone in recovery. I don't talk about addicts. I think the word has too much power, so I don't use it, other than to tell you that if you hear me reference neighbors, I'm speaking of my friends and those who are in recovery. So I saw a huge problem in our backyard, and with the help of some locals, we decided to form a group to start talking about the issues around substance use and why we feel like the results that we're seeing here locally, aren't measuring up. And after about 6 months of coming together and looking at the problem, opiAID was birthed. And what opiAID is a software that we've developed that attaches to an electronic health record system. And essentially what we're doing is we're helping medically assisted treatment centers, MAC clinics, improve retention in their programs. That's where we found out was the highest level of value that we could bring to the table. So using a data science approach, we're addressing the white space. It's the time when individuals who are struggling with addiction are around the people, places, and things that have caused them to use outside of the clinic. So you have no eyes on the patient outside of the clinic, and that's where they're relapsing. That's when they're being tempted and they're craving. So we address that white space with data. We started out leveraging psychometric and psychological assessments like the CAPS-5, Pittsburgh sleep study, and various different psychological assessments, and bringing them together to get a better idea of where that individual is and be able to present that data to clinicians so that they can make data-driven decisions faster about who's higher likelihood of relapsing, so stratifying the risk of patients. And where we're going is a whole new place. We're actually doing research starting here in about a week, maybe 2 weeks, with a local MAT center called Coastal Horizons. We're actually doing biometric research that's being funded by the National Institute of Health. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. So opiAID, MAC clinics lack the ability to analyze their data, right? If they had the ability to get the insights that we're developing now, retention wouldn't be so low. If if we believe that MAT is the gold standard for treating people with substance use, but only 1 out of 3 people stabilize in MAT treatment, we got a big problem. So the goal of opiAID is very, very simple. Using our data science prowess and having doctors and PhDs who contextually understand the value of this data, we're putting together, we're finishing off this EHR plugin that will allow clinicians within MAT centers to quickly understand where a patient is and where they're going to be going, at literally showing them predictively where their scores are going to be, a week or 2 from now, so that they can get ahead of the problem and focus their time and attention on those who are at greatest risk of relapse. The research, just to tell you a little bit about that, the research that we're doing, funded by the National Institute of Health, is to do passive collection of biometric data from the upper arm in order to understand key things about individuals who are currently in medically assisted treatment. So we'll be studying the signatures for withdrawal, craving, whether or not they're using other drugs in addition to their MAT drugs, how they're titrating or absorbing their dose within medically assisted treatment. And all this is to alert clinicians and their support network to do just-in-time interventions to prevent relapse. We're literally building digital thresholds and have built some digital thresholds within the system that are clinically relevant, so that we can, use AI, machine learning, and software in such a way that we can have a meaningful impact. If we can keep 2 out of 3 people in treatment through the first 12 weeks of MAT, you will significantly change the world. And apparently the National Institute of Health agreed with us. So we received a grant this past September for $276,000 from NIH NIDA, and that was followed up with another $75,000 from the state of North Carolina to support our phase 1 work. We'll be also submitting a phase 2 application come September, and are also in line to submit an NIH HEAL grant in April. I'm going to show you some quick slides of our software, and then I'm done. So that's a login page. This is essentially what clinicians are going to see. They're going to see their patients, the risk stratified, watch indicates that someone's in trouble. And on the right hand of the screen, if you can see that, it's basically like a zoomed in version of Janet E's profile for quick view. The second page just gives quick little insights. This is what's going on if you were to click on Janet's profile. We'd see on the right side the psychometric assessments, where they are and where they're going to be going. For a clinician, this is really relevant because while they have the ability to individually look at these, they don't have any aggregate view of their psychological assessments, nor do they have any idea where it's going to go. They might have a gut feeling, but we're using a data-driven approach to show them based on historic data. And then we're tying this right back into the electronic health record system to telehealth visit. So if they see someone who's actually in trouble, they can connect it and connect with them through their phone and do a visit. And all this is billable through remote patient monitoring codes through Blue Cross Blue Shield. And while I know that is true, it still has to be proven out. Our proof of concept is going to be launched here in the next few months with Triad Behavioral Resources, a local clinic, in addition to our partnership with Coastal Horizons. And that's all I got for you. Sorry if I went a little bit over. Any questions you may have, I'm happy to help.
Jacqueline, you up for questions? I've got a couple if you want.
Yeah, please. I love questions.
It looks like Jacqueline's actually frozen.
That's all right, Jackie. We still love you.
I hope that doesn't mean that if she's hosted the session, we get in trouble. But anyway, so wonderful presentation, and I've got a couple different questions. But the one you answered in terms of the data or in terms of the payment system there. The other one, though, is I've seen multiple models now starting to show up, or multiple approaches starting to show up. One in terms of prison recidivism, trying to look at behavioral tracking of people and their success getting out. I've seen an alcohol-based recovery system that's trying to track people and their recovery and their ability to stay on track. This looks like it's an opium one. And what I'm curious about, just kind of intellectually, is do you see folks starting to converge on any sort of body of knowledge or common set of behavioral analytic tools that would allow us to start seeing some common patterns in these algorithms that can be used for behavioral tracking and efficacy of treatment approaches. I'm just curious what your perspective on that is, and whether or not, as I look across these different domains of kind of similar behavioral tracking and success in program kind of things, whether that's a pathway you're on, or I think so unique depending upon the specific domain and type of problem.
It's a great question. So if I were to condense that a little bit, are there tools that are being used today that are agreed upon? And is there some way to validate what we're doing that this could be a standard moving forward? Is that fair?
That's a great way of framing it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So there are companies that currently have some traction. Paratherapeutics is one of them. What's interesting, and I actually got to hand it to them. What's interesting is they took cognitive behavior therapy, which we all understand how that works, and they coded it. So they're leveraging cognitive behavioral therapy to understand, what is causing people to relapse and not be successful in their treatment. They're actually addressing a lot of similar things that we're doing. And I take my hats off to them, because I'll tell you what, all I want is for people to reach freedom in their recovery. That's all I want. I don't care who does it. I'm perfectly fine not being the guy who gets it done, right? But I'll be damned if I sit by, part of my language, and not do something, right? This is out of my backyard, and I'm not okay with it. I've built companies and exited them. Tyler has too. Been there, done that, right? This is a mission, like a passion for me. So we're going to see this through. As far as platforms, leveraging social platforms, cognitive behavior therapy, different components, there's a lot of things out there, and some of them work pretty well. Paratherapeutics has got something going. But we're going to be the first company in the nation. I'm not just saying this, I know it. We're going to be the first company in the nation leveraging biometrics that gets FDA clearance. It's going to be us, because we took a research approach to it, and we're engaged with the director of the National Institute of Health. So I'm pretty certain, based on some of the commentary we've gotten from Capitol Hill and from the folks at NIH, we'll be first to be validated on the biometric front, which is beautiful. The goal is, let me show you the device real quick. Is that okay? So this is a device that we're using for research, and you're not going to see these around. This is not like an Apple Watch. So can you see that? This is worn on the upper arm, and that's how we're going to be doing the research. Super sensitive, sophisticated device it's called the Varion device. Very sophisticated for the type of research that we're doing. In the future, however, we hope to be device agnostic, so that anybody with a class 2 medical device will be able to pick up these basic measures, right? And we'll be able to interpolate that data for them, so they can get insight into their own recovery. That's the goal.
Very nice. It looks like we're missing Jacqueline. So if others have questions, why don't you pop in there?
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi.
Hello. Good to see you, Dr. Barati, by the way.
Yes. This is Bahar. Hi, David. Great presentation, and great to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah. So that's fascinating. And I was just curious if it's okay with you. Tell us a little bit about what kind of data you collect, and in terms of behavioral and in terms of physiological, what parameters are most important to you?
So from the electronic health record standpoint, it's kind of interesting, because it's not the things you necessarily would think right out of the gate were super important. Obviously, psychometric assessments are very important. When you see someone not sleeping well, and their, depression, the Beck's depression index becomes elevated, there's some things you can start to correlate quickly just from the gut, let alone data-driven standpoint. Comorbid conditions are important. Then these smaller things like how does your addiction affect your ability to pay your bills, i.e. how much of your income is being spent on substances? Because I'll tell you what, it's pretty amazing if it's not enough to make it hurt, that you're not seeing their lives fall apart around, they keep going. So it's some of those questions. On the biometric side, I can't tell you.
Right.
But I will tell you this, there are variables that are being picked up by every class 2 medical device. It's just that our signal to noise ratio is much greater. Our SNR is much greater with the device that we're using than the typical wearable, because of obvious things with, data integrity and leakage of light and pollution and all those sort of pieces.
I see. And it's all through that sensor that they put on their arm?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Fascinating.
I'm glad you joined, by the way.
Thank you. Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Reeser, good afternoon. I'm curious, Alaska has a wide geographic span, and I assume this product suggests that there is opportunity to reach populations that are harder to serve by nature of, deficient infrastructure, technology, all of those things. So how are you incorporating that in the design and perhaps even your demonstrations to make sure that there's an opportunity to reach those that are harder to serve by the medical community?
That's a fantastic question. So I don't have the answers to all of the questions that may pop up, but I'm going to give it my best shot, if that's okay. So in areas where we have very good Wi-Fi, the goal is to have these devices connect directly to the cloud. And in doing that, we can do less fringe machine learning, which, by the way, let me step back for a second. opiAID's had the good fortune of participating in Riot Accelerator, the #1 IoT accelerator in the country. So we've gotten a lot of information about how to build and make successful technology like this through our accelerator. But as far as being able to utilize this in all different types of geographic regions, there's going to be a capacity to be able to download the data when you are in a Wi-Fi rich area, or have it continuously communicate to the cloud. So there'll be enough onboard storage, at least on the initial devices that we use, onboard storage to be able to collect that data until you are in an area where it can be transmitted. Because we realize that can be a problem. But I also think there's probably some really, pragmatic workarounds, i.e. this. If there are individuals who are in treatment and they are also part of AA, they usually meet in schools, right? Or public buildings. Well, they usually have really good Wi-Fi in schools and public buildings. I can set the sensors up to hit certain geographic nets so that when you walk into an area like that and it recognizes the Wi-Fi, it sends an encrypted connection, or it sends an encrypted packet with the data in it, and it can be decrypted in the cloud so that no one can catch it en route. So there are things that can be done like that also.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm back. I had some technical issues, but I'm back now. Kai is asking, he's curious about how you get data across multiple medical health record silos and historical records in prior provider MHR systems. Whew, that's a technical question, but maybe give it a go.
So this is the beautiful thing, right? The data, especially physiologic data, it's all the same. These assessments, all the same. The funny thing is, when you're working with different EHR providers, they call the same bit of data something different. So I can refit this to do anything in any language, period. So we have our system built to basically integrate into a group called Cario. So if you have any clients that are using Cario, this is a natural plugin. It becomes very simple. But yeah, if we wanted to switch something up and use a different system or connect to a different silo, I would just need their naming conventions. So a basic data library would be enough. And I can create an API call and transform the data the same way. It's just a matter of knowing what columns are called. And if you're naming the data something different, it's honestly that simple, as long as the data is complete. Anyone doing data science in this call realizes you're only as good as clean as the data is. That's like 80% of the work. So might be some work there, but essentially it's just getting data libraries, and being able to know the naming conventions so you can swap things around to create new API call.
So Steve Meyer up here. Are y'all looking at the preventative side at all? In other words, these same biomarkers, these same behaviors, et cetera, just a general health wearable even, because, so many of the tragedies that you see in the opioids and, what I've experienced in, my own personal life, the people that I know that are close to me, they never made it into treatment, right? They died of an overdose.
Right.
So could they have been caught earlier? Could something like this help earlier so that, you could get them into treatment, or you could get them, into a prevention program, get them help before the tragedy, basically?
I absolutely see that being the case, because as we become better at stratifying risk ahead of time, and we can just import the data into the system and create a risk profile for that individual and almost create a story of what we think is going to happen based on what we've seen in the data before they even begin treatment. You know, before we ever get to that point, they have a family history and they're 15 years old and they haven't even touched anything yet. But, you know, but they have a predisposition to not metabolize opiates the same way because they have a genetic marker that doesn't allow them to do it. So if they get a major knee injury playing football, you know, this is a child that potentially could become addicted more easily. You know, they maybe have and there are lab tests that I think touch on this as well. I heard of a startup that learned how to decipher essentially who was going to have the genetic predisposition, if you will, to be able to become addicted more easily. And you combine that with the genetic marker of not being able to metabolize it as quickly, and you really have a problem. So I think this could be used as a screening tool in the past, but just to be honest, I'm incredibly focused. I'm literally thinking about the first 12 weeks of MAT treatment, because I know if I can make a difference in that first 12 weeks of MAT, we change everything. You know, where it can be used and changed to be able to use for other purposes, I'm open to all of that. I want to solve the first 12 weeks.
Gotcha.
The induction phase.
Right. Thanks.
So I'm hoping to add Carol Howarth's question. She would like to know where you are in your trial process, and you may have already go over this, but please reiterate it. And then how we can help you here. How could Alaskans help you in your current phase or in the next one?
That's awesome. Is that Carol who was asking the question?
Yeah, Carol Howarth.
Hi, Carol. Nice to meet you. So we're beginning our phase 1 research with Coastal Horizons on my birthday. It looks like January 30th. If anyone wants to send me something, have at it. So on January 30th, there'll be a lot of fine neighbors who are participating in what we call the wearable project. And they're going to be wearing this device on their upper arm, like so. And it's going to be a passive collection of data. I don't know if I'm holding it upside down or not. It's going to be a passive collection of data happening using this device. And that starts basically on my birthday, and we'll be analyzing that data over the course of 6 months, you know, doing continuous monitoring in order to unlock these algorithms, which we preemptively know a little bit about what we're going to see, but we'll be able to prove it out in the wild. We'll be applying phase 2 of our NIH NIDA funded research in September, and we're applying for a HEAL grant in April. Thank you, Carol, for your question.
So, and I'm gonna be bold too and direct. If we were able to find MAT clinics in Alaska who were willing to work with you, would you be willing to work with us?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Especially on these HEAL grant opportunities, and so, you know what would be really great, honestly, if you have some researchers out there that want to help participate with us in this research, that would be awesome. Because there are so many HEAL grant opportunities offered by NIH that we could take advantage of, but I'm out of manpower on the research side. We've got like 6 researchers at it already.
Awesome, good to know.
So the question that I have really is then more specific,
Okay.
which is, you know, what are you looking for then in terms of a provider? You know, are you looking for certain numbers? What makes it work?
For a MAT clinic?
For your trials, yeah.
For trials? So this is the interesting thing. Even with 40 patients, you can make a huge difference studying 40 patients, because we're taking every second measurements. So the important thing is I'd like them to have no heart conditions, pre-existing heart conditions. You know, that really is very helpful when you're looking at their heart rate. You know, under the age of 55 is kind of helpful as well. But basically anyone who's stable in their MAT treatment, you know, maybe you know 6 months into their MAT treatment or are fairly stable in their MAT treatment, that becomes a good prospect to begin study. But honestly, I'm interested in all the populations. I'll tell you, you know what? This got me thinking now. 2 groups that I'd really like to work with are incarcerated populations, right? That's huge, because a lot of people are in prison for the wrong reasons. You shouldn't be in prison because you have a physiologic challenge, because I believe addiction is a physiologic response, not a moral failing. You shouldn't land in prison because your body reacted to something that my body would react the same way to. God love you. You shouldn't be in prison, right? So I'm more interested in working in incarcerated populations where they actually should be on Suboxone and not behind bars, right? I'm also interested in working with a pregnant population who are also have addiction crisis in their life. And in fact, we're partnering with the Tides here locally to do just that. on a research study at some point in 2021 or early 2022. So those are two populations I'd really love to be able to work with next.
Does that answer your question, Carol?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, awesome. So I am going to follow up with one last question from Baraje. I recognize we're bumping up against our 1:30 deadline, but I will hang on, and I believe that David and Tyler are also willing to stay and answer questions. But this follows Carol's question really well. She wants to know what the patients think. How are they feeling about using this? And lastly, Baraje wants to know if you've tried or thought about the I-Corps program.
We're actually signing up for the I-Corps program. Thank you for that. We literally just talking about this yesterday. That's great. In fact, if you have some feedback on that, we can talk offline what your experience was if you did it already. But yeah, we're literally signing up for that. I know the deadline's on the 2nd of February. And the second part of that question was, again, I lost my train of thought for a second.
That's all right. Just how patients, what happens when, and I had the same question as.
So let me tell you something. When I see a problem, I want to get deeply involved in it to the point where I'll hang out anywhere to learn. And I went into some maybe possibly dangerous situations to find out what was real. And in some circumstances, we visited groups like not Coastal Horizons. What is this residential program called? My brain just went sideways. So there's a program here in Wilmington where it's a 28-day program, and it's huge. They have locations all over the place. And we asked people who were in these residential programs, these 28-day programs, would you use technology? Like, what would you do with this? What does this mean to you? Sitting in on group sessions. And we literally have like pages and pages and pages of people who signed up that just want to be part of the next study. They said, give us anything, any glimpse of hope that I can measure and track my own recovery. Like, put some power back in my hands. Because this is the great secret. Even technology can't solve this, right? All you can do is create an environment where people can be successful. It's like the gym, right? I can open a gym, have trainers and weights and everything there. If you come and do the work, you're going to get better. Like, we know that. But the thing is, you can't force them to lift. All you can do is create an environment where they can be successful, right? So we take an approach where it's like, look, don't share anything you don't want to share. Our data agreement has 12 levels to it. You can share everything, give us the best chance of helping you get better, or you can share nothing if you want to. It's completely up to you. We respect you. This is not an ankle bracelet. This is empowerment. We want to help you. We're going to use technology in a meaningful way. And they embrace it. They want it. Here anyway. I don't know about other places, but here in Wilmington, they want it.
So quick question, Steve Meyer up here again. So you were talking about working with the pregnant population or wanting to study a pregnant population. And one of the questions I have related to that is your technology sort of substance agnostic? Because you're talking about, your code called opioid, but for instance, we have a huge fetal alcohol syndrome problem in, basically alcohol is the substance. There are other substances, I'm sure, but it's historically a big fetal alcohol problem in Alaska. And I would assume the biomarkers, the cravings, et cetera, they're either similar or they're the same.
Right. So the way that we're building this is not strictly for opioids. And I will tell you, treating alcoholism is a different beast. It is. There are some things that are similar and there's crossover, but it is a different beast.
Okay.
And I do believe that, with more data, because if we know people who are in treatment, half of them have underlying psychoses, many of them, also drink, right? So there's going to be overlapping findings that we come across, but this is specifically being built for other substances. I believe that we'll be able to shift that model and also look at alcohol, but alcohol is a different beast to treat. It really is.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone who has participated. You're welcome to stay. Tyler and David will be here with me. But this was an awesome presentation, really fantastic. We're very excited about what you're developing and certainly want to continue our relationship with you. So I'll be doing some follow-up connections and introductions. And please, you as well, if there's people on the call that you'd like to follow up with, please let me know, David and Tyler. So does anybody have any final questions that they'd like to ask or want to stay on?
I have a question. Yeah,
Sure.
Jacqueline, so I can do it either now or in just a few.
Now is fine. Let's capture the
Okay.
moment.
I was curious, early in your presentation, you mentioned there's two things you need. It was the data and the dollars. What kind of dollars are you thinking about? I cued into the grants that you've been awarded for the data collection here, but what kinds of financing, what is it that you're looking for from the investment community?
So from an investment standpoint, the reason I say data and dollars is because simply, large amounts of data help us to improve the algorithm much faster, put out a better product, so it doesn't take the 6 to 12 months to really start perfecting it if you have a ton of data. The
Right.
dollars, simply put, helps us to get to sales, helps us to hire more data scientists, to create more plugins to other EHRs, refine some of our understanding and the outputs as well as the representations of that data. Really what we're looking for is something sizable. A small dollar amount, like a couple $100,000 dedicated strictly to software development and deploying the software would be helpful. But to really have a really nice runway and be able to get this into a lot of hands quickly, a few $1 million would carry us for 2 years and allow me to properly staff a group of data scientists to dedicate to this like a true business. Because at this point, we're a startup. We have done a lot of work. I've come a lot of money out of pocket to make this happen. And the research dollars pay for research, which is great. What it doesn't pay for is software development or anything that looks like that. So that's still out of the pocket, or legal for that matter. And that's been expensive too. So, a few $1 million gets us out there in front of a lot of people quickly. But a couple $100,000 helps us to complete research and launch. Not research, sorry. Complete the application and launch.
Right.
Thank you.
That's exciting. We're a cross section of different groups here. And so there's definitely people who have the investment hats. And so we'll just try to see what we can do with that. So thank you. Are there, Eric, would you have any specific questions that you would like to ask?
No, I don't think so. I did ask earlier in the chat. It got overshadowed, but which is fine. The FDA approval, how far out is that in the process?
Yeah, so FDA clearance is what we're going to need initially. FDA clearance, once we start down the track, is going to take about 14 months. And we actually already started those conversations, and I have an FDA consultant on my team. So we're pretty good in that regard. FDA approval, who knows? It takes a little while longer. Let's put it that way. It's probably 3 years for actual FDA approval. But what's really beautiful is, the more research that we do and the more refined the predictions become, those timelines speed up too. And we have the right people. Actually the director of NIDA, Dr. Angeloni is the one who's overseeing the PO on my grant. He also spent 10 years in the biomedical division of the FDA. So he's going to help us speed that along as well. So I'm confident we got the people, but it takes time, Eric. It does.
Yep. Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, if there's no more questions, then I'm going to say a big thank you to opiAID for coming today. That was just a fantastic presentation and truly exciting. And thank you everyone who's come today, and I wish you all well. We'll see you here again in 2 weeks when Thaddeus Medical Systems will present. So thank you and have a wonderful Thursday, everyone.
Great. Bye, guys.
Thanks so
Nice
much.
meeting you.
Take care.
Take care.